Moving on, US officials say that the Russian President Vladimir Putin is concerned about Russian army's slower than expected progress in Ukraine. As a result, according to intelligence, he could double down on his attack. And the mounting offensive is already visible in major Ukrainian cities. Now, WION correspondent Jody Cohen earlier spoke to Dr. Jonathan Freeman, an international affairs and Russia expert from Hebrew University, to hear his analysis on what could happen next. Listen in.
Dr. Freeman, thank you for speaking with WION. Now, with Russia expected to increase its advance, Ukraine has applied to join the European Union. What are the implications of this? And with Russia saying its nuclear deterrent forces are on high alert, people are even talking of a third world war. How likely is that?
I think the fact that Ukraine is seeking to join the European Union is really a way to project itself to the world that it wants to be with the West. We're not just talking about the EU or NATO or other organizations that want to go to the Ukraine. The Ukraine wants to be part of the West. That's what a majority of the people in the Ukraine want. That's also a way that the Ukraine can sort of project more strength in front of Russia. Russia is seeking to announce that Ukraine is more part of the East, part of Russia, culturally, politically, economically. But here we have an act that's showing that the Ukraine thinks otherwise. When it comes to the World War III, anything can happen. We also know that, historically speaking, every 80 to 100 years, we have a very big war that causes very drastic changes in the world. So since World War II ended, we almost have reached that point in history. So it really depends on what happens and how the world reacts to Russian moves.
President Zelensky of Ukraine has expressed doubts that the negotiations between Ukraine and Russia will succeed. However, the two countries have announced a second round of talks. What's your assessment on their chance of success?
I think it really depends on how much Ukraine keeps up its fight. I think that when the war began, many thought that in a few hours, a few days, the Ukraine will be defeated. But right now we're seeing that the Ukrainians are giving a fight. They're getting lots of more weaponry from the West. That also shows that the West is betting more on the ability of the Ukraine to resist Russian moves. It could be that the negotiations are a ploy by Russia to try to have the world see that Russia is trying to seek peace, but at the same time, it continues to provide firepower, even as those talks continued in Belarus. We also have to remember that Belarus is a side and an ally of Russia. So the site of these negotiations isn't neutral. It's really happening in a place that's currently fighting Ukraine. So I think as long as that happens, these negotiations probably won't be going anywhere. And it really depends on how much Russia is resisted on the ground to make it more of a chance that a ceasefire can be reached.
You've previously said that you think Israel is one of the best countries in the world right now to serve as a mediator because of its close links to both sides. Now Israel is set to support the General Assembly resolution condemning Russia. Where does this leave Israel's relations with Russia?
I think that it is true that Israel is going to be supporting the resolution in the General Assembly and other moves. But generally speaking, what we have seen so far from Israel is really mainly words, not many actions. And I think that even Russia knows, and even the Ukraine knows, that Israel has the ear for both countries. Israel has the ear of the United States as well. And I think that even with all these announcements by our foreign minister, even with the fact that we're sending humanitarian aid to the Ukraine, the fact we're assisting people to leave and really also supporting U.S. intelligence on what's going to happen. We've always supported it. I think it still remains to be seen whether or not Israel will be a mediator. I think that even now, even if it isn't published, I think that Israel is involved with mediation. And I think many, many countries are expecting Israel is really a place that has understanding of both sides to aid the world in trying to bring a sort of ceasefire to the situation.
With the West tightening its sanctions, especially through SWIFT, do you think China can fill in for Russia's war chest? So far, it has criticized sanctions politically.
I think that China can assist Russia and its weaknesses when it comes to the economy because of these sanctions, because of the desire to remove them from the SWIFT code. I think that China has a lot of industries that can now increase their trade with Russia. They have their own financial system in China. So I think Russia will be looking to countries like China to try to fill that void if indeed these sanctions weaken its ability to get certain things from around the world. China has everything they need, really, food, other stuff. But again, China has a lot to lose as well, because at the same time it wants to maybe assist Russia. This will maybe hurt Chinese standing with other countries, countries that will tell China, listen, you want to continue trading with us, you have to stop trading with them. And I think that that's why China, on the one hand, has been understanding of what's going on with Russia, but on the other hand, hasn't been full in support of the Russian moves in the Ukraine. We've also seen reports that China is trying to get Russia to lower its tone when it comes to nuclear weapons as well, which I remind the viewers, China also has nuclear weapons.
Thank you, Dr. Jonathan Freeman, for breaking that all down for us. Let's hope for peace in the days to come. This is Jodie Cohn for WION. World is One.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.